So what I'll say too is like, so in terms of like specific stereotypes, knowing both of your backgrounds, are there any that you're like actively fighting, like, constantly like, I don't want to fit this mold. I don't want people to look at me this way. Or is it more of like a pressure free, like, I'm just gonna keep doing what I've been doing?
So I'm in a cool part of my life, I think, after a lot of my struggles, where I've kind of like, I think I've done a decent enough job of kind of stripping away the expectations that I feel like were kind of placed on me in terms of like, how to engage with people and personal identity, to where like I'm
Okay.
at a cool point where I get to choose who I am,
Mhm.
right? Like I have a choice to subscribe to, um, being Filipino American, right? I can choose to have that be a part of my identity. Sure, like there's a level of relationship that's there in community,
Mhm.
but to some extent, like I don't I don't need to abide by certain expectations that I placed on myself to be Filipino just because I'm second or third generation.
Mhm.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Jason. I think that you have to find what's authentic to you. And so if I worried about what other people thought of me, if I put
Mhm.
so much value on it, I would never be able to really live my life. I wouldn't be able to choose what I want to do because
100%.
I have to do what everybody else wants me to do. Um, I can think of a time in my life, like when I was in high school, where I became very cognizant. I went to a majority Black and Latinx high school, and I remembered my first time going into college in a predominantly white at a predominantly white institution, and being very aware that we were loud. Like if I was in a group of my friends, like we were like cackling, having a good old time in the caf or something. And I remember getting stares. And I had a mentor come to me and was like, y'all should probably quiet down. People are looking at you. And I don't remember what I did. I think we were like, girl, we're gonna do what we want to do. Cause like if the joke is funny, I'm gonna laugh.
Yeah.
But like I think it's the stereotypes that are put on young Black people, young Black teens or children or young adults, especially like, whether it's, and sometimes just young people in general, like youth culture is really like, looked down upon. Whether it's the way that we dress or the way that we do this or the fact that we put color in our hair or whatever the heck it may be.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
it's always heavy policing from like the generation prior or
yeah.
generations prior, plural.
If I listened to that though, I don't think I'd be happy. So I'm really in a place now of what is authentic to me. I know that there's a time and a place for things like laughing loudly at a funeral, like that's out of place. But laughing loudly in a cafeteria where there's other people who are talking loudly, like that's not out of place.
It's
You're just telling me that because I'm young and I'm Black that I should not be doing that. And I'm not going to subscribe to that. So it's really just about, think about what is authentic to me and then allowing myself, like, give myself the permission to do it.
yeah. So both of you, like, does it sound like as we get older, more mature, more comfortable, we are allowing ourselves to, kind of be our more authentic selves in those spaces? Like, do you feel like it's much more of an ongoing challenge, like that actively have to do it, or do you feel like the environments themselves have kind of become more accepting?
I would
I
say I
feel
don't
like,
care what the environment does.
I
yeah,
like that.
that's good. That's good. Yeah, I feel like there is still pressure to conform even in like subcultures.
Mhm.
And so for me, at the very least, it is still a challenge because I have to make sure that I'm checking myself where it's like, hey, I'm not getting too caught up. Hey, I'm not getting too caught up.
Mhm.
Um, I know, I'm sorry, Darius. I'm writing down questions too because Mickey's saying stuff where I'm just like, I'm thinking.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
I have a question for you, kind of in your, and Darius, if you want to chime in too.
Okay.
So you're talking about like how you've needed to become authentic and you've needed to find this identity. And I was wondering if you feel like there's pressure when you're in a minority group to become more authentic. Like, do you think that people kind of in the majority groups don't necessarily feel the same pressure to develop a similar level of authenticity?
Hmm.
I
Can I
don't
ask one
know.
clarifying question
Yeah,
real
go
quick,
for
Mickey?
it.
Sorry about that.
Go for it.
So
Mhm.
would you say like in the minority group, like you yourself being in the minority of like the population?
No,
Or okay.
I just mean like when you feel like you're in the minority group, do you feel like you have pressure placed on you to to like bloom. I guess in a sense where it's like when you're in the majority, do you think that people
are already like more accepting, more
are
familiar kind of thing?
maybe not so much, but like, do you think that maybe it's because they're in the majority, like they're already accepted just because of their traits, that they don't have to develop anything inside of them?
Okay.
I feel like I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of like the kind of old saying that runs within like communities of colors, like we have to work twice as hard to get half of what they get, type of thing. And I think for me, if I kept trying to run this race of life or go through this journey of life, because I hate running, so go through this journey of life, always trying.
I don't know anybody that does like running, so
right,
they say
like,
they do. I don't believe it.
Terrible practice. But if I try to walk through this journey of my life, always trying to meet the standards set by people who are in majoritized groups, I would never make it. I would always fail. And I think for me, it has taken some time, especially as I get further into my career and my life and thinking about what are the things that I want out of this life. How do I want to live a life well lived? It's no longer subscribing to what whiteness and capitalism has told me that I should want. It's being able to choose what it is. And I think when it comes to different, like, you know, in terms of, you know, groups who are marginalized and groups who are majoritized, I don't know if they if other folks have to do go on this side. I think we, in all sense, we go through our identity exploration. Like we have theories of racial identity formations, and personality development. Like we have these types of theories that exist. And in some ways, I think we all kind of go through them at different ways. I think that because of different privileges people may have, like I think about myself as an able-bodied person. I'm thinking like, okay, for me who has a privilege and able-bodiedness, like, did I have to come through, like, what are some things that I had to work hard at, or there were things I did not have to work hard at due to me having able-bodied, like being able-bodied, in comparison to somebody who is disabled. And probably so. Like, I think if it's the small things of getting out of bed, or if it's or something major as like access to healthcare, or being able to marry the person that I love and not lose my disability.
Yeah, that's right.
I do think that there is a lot of nuances in the different experience of people who are marginalized and people who have privileges.
See, it's interesting too, and I am glad that you kind of brought up like the perspective of privilege, because like we all have like certain privileges, you
Definitely.
know, like even with all three of us being American, like that's kind of like a privilege in itself.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
So it's like
I only speak English. Well, I speak some Japanese, but like I only need to speak.
Even my English, like, man, I speak like very light Spanglish. Because I know a little bit of Spanish. I add that in there. But to contribute to what you're asking as well, it's very interesting, especially going after Mickey too, because I'm doing like some reflecting. It's like I think I've been in a situation throughout my life where I definitely felt more marginalized, where it was much more like, as you mentioned, like the active fight kind of becomes more subconscious. So one experience that with me in engineering through UNLV that I experienced a lot, there was many times I was like the only person that could, you know, that was a Black male within the whole classroom. And to the point where at first it was shocking, but then it got normalized. But into that, I started developing my own biases because of it. Because like anytime when I would have a class where there is an additional Black person, Black male, Black woman, whatever, in the classroom, I would naturally try to form like some sort of relationship to kind of get some affirmation of like my own identity, to kind of say like they more than likely, and this is, you know, based on assumptions that could easily be wrong, but walking up to them, they would be much more familiar with my experience, my culture, things of that nature. But there was a lot of times where that wasn't the case. And it would just be me looking around the classroom and I'm like, well, it's me and a bunch of I would consider everyone randos, even though they're not really randos. But it's like I would go into that class just like, okay, let me go in, like Mickey was saying, work my butt off, get whatever grades I can, and try my best to exceed. But I think I internalized it to the point where it was no longer exceeding for them, like them being the theoretical randos that I had, but it was more so of exceeding for myself. So I can look back and kind of say, the representation in the room, even if it was this small percentage, very small percentage, there was at least there was some form of percentage that was top tier, that was exceeding others who was more standardized within that classroom, within that space. And so, like, because even Jason, like when we met, it was because Tau Beta Pi, the Engineering Honor Society, which I was the president for that term. And so for me, going into the presidency, especially like with previous presidents kind of being much more lax, I took it upon myself to really raise the bar. Like I looked at it as like, I don't know how many Black presidents there were for the UNLV chapter of Tau Beta Pi, but I know that I was one of them. And knowing that, I took it upon myself to say, now we're going to have these requirements if you want to become a Tau Beta. You want to do community service. I wanted to do resume workshops, interviews, things of that nature to, by the end of it, you feel that you really gained value of the experience. And now you can say like, you are officially a Tau Beta. And then when they look back on it, and I did get feedback from both the Tau Bates as well as the advisor, Dr. Moore, shout out to you, really great advisor. It was very, very positive because they liked what I did with it. So in addition to me genuinely wanting to doing it myself and just wanting to exceed in my natural environment, there is that aspect to me saying, I don't know when the next Black president's going to be of this org. Let me make sure that I leave that footprint and let me make sure it's a big ass footprint at the end of the day. And I like that because even knowing, I think 3 or 4 generations, I kept up with it. Yeah, there was no more Dariuses. So for me, I can at least look back and say for that time being, I did all that I did to represent myself, but then also to leave that positive image of what I represent culturally, ethnicity wise, so on and so forth. Sorry if that was a little bit long. Yeah, but I really passionate there.
It's important though. I definitely think that representation in engineering is like a very topical conversation, right? I mean, there's so much. I was reading earlier today about how like in all of the Elon Musk companies, there's just like rampant sexism, rampant racism, and all of this stuff that's allowed in there.
A lot of tech companies too, even Google. There was a Black woman developing, I think it was something about AI ethics.
That was the ethical AI, yeah. She just started up her own spin-off company, and I think that she's getting some good traction. But
and that was good because it showed the support from the community, both within her community as well as with the affiliated ally communities, I guess you could say. There's probably a better way to word it, but Mickey will probably know that. But that's the best way I can come up with the wording for it. But yeah, continue. Sorry.
Just got off the clock, just got on my chill. Called on my homie Brent to see what be the deal. What you trying to do? I'm just trying to heal. Hella floated, never bloated's what I'm trying to feel. Hop in the whip and